want to sit here?
The laser pointer, laser. Abbiamo il laser. Sì, 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 grazie. Ma do we have to introduce ourselves?
If you want,
No.
Renata.
Or we say our bio are in the website.
If you want.
No. Hello. Hello, thank you for being here. I'm Claudio Agosti, she's Renata Avila, and Federico Sarchi. We're going to talk about analysis on algorithm, which clearly looks not so sexy, but you will see the analysis we made during the Italian and the Argentinian election. This panel is live tweeted, so we will just update the links and the data we are releasing as answer of this tweet. If you are using the social network, look for the hashtag and look on the replies. How the problem looks like. Algorithms normally are thought as a mathematical, technical problem, but the impact is pretty concrete, because, for example, this Karen person in Twitter explained how she got a bad experience. One of her friends died, was saying on Facebook, I'm sick, I'm getting a surgery, I don't know what's going to happen, but this post never surfaced. That's because when you believe that you are writing on Facebook, it's not said that your post will appear. And if this can have an impact on personal relationship, in the informative ecosystem and in the also political discourse for the democratic process, knowing how you get informed is important. So the problem is that the way for which Facebook decide which information will appear to you or will not are not well understood. So maybe some of you don't even imagine that a lot of posts never appear, despite you are subscribed to some sources or you are friend to someone. Algorithms are like social policy. So algorithms decide what is our priority, decide what matters for us. But only I know what matters for me. It's nonsense that Facebook has to decide it for us. And for sure, if it has a public impact, at least they has to be available for public scrutiny. And we know that since 2013, Facebook was experimenting over the user like a rats lab. So the first experiment that has been published was the one on the emotional contagion. So testing over 600,000 users if they can become happier or more sad based on the content that appears to them. Recently, Mark Zuckerberg, testifying on the Congress, stated that the artificial intelligence tool they have will got to improve and improve again to remove hate speech or nudity, harassment, every kind of problem. Artificial intelligence will solve it. That's why we're also addressing Facebook as a platform, because it's the one that can have more impact in our society. So we made a test during the Italian election campaign. We create 6 profiles. They have specific names: Andrea, Michele, Antonietta, Santiago, Britta, and Oliviero. They got attributed some political orientation, or someone was the undecided, the last one, Oliviero. We created a list of 30 pages. We pick 6 pages for every political orientation among those 5. The list was composed by some community page, some media that is normally near the political orientation, some politician, or the party page. To characterize the user, we had that Andrea was making likes only to the 6 page you see about the right-wing party. So noi con Salvini ufficiale, il populista as a community, il giornale, Lega Salvini Premier, Rivoglio Bologna of Beatrice Borgonzoni, if I remember correctly, and Giorgia Meloni. we somehow train the algorithm to believe that those users were orientated politically. Then we had a web extension, a system that ran in your browser and was making a copy of every post appearing on the newsfeed. The copy is made because only public posts are visible, so we were looking only in public posts that are shared with everybody. And we were collecting automatically during the electoral campaign every day 13 times per day, 45 posts in every of those 6 profiles in order to see what appeared to someone and what doesn't to another. For example, we see a post from Movement 5 Star and the center left Santiago didn't see. This one has been seen but has not been seen by the Michele far right. Antonietta of the left saw it, Britta, Movement 5 Star, saw it. And you can see that some post was keeping appearing if it belongs to your orientation, and maybe other that belongs to someone other do not appear to you. You know, filter bubble is a concept that is quite anecdotal. You know that if you like something, you will keep to have data that reinforce your position. But there is no actual data on it. We are trying to make a more scientific approach. After the data is collected, we associate metadata, so who sent it, when, which kind of post it was, if it was a picture or a test. Well, this we can see in question and answer. And then we want to visualize the algorithm. We want to show the algorithm personalization. This visualization starts to show some insight. We have on the right every day, 8, 9, 10, 11 of February. Those are the name of the profile. Santiago, center left, alt-right, Michele, left, Movement 5 Star, right, undecided. The color and the bar represent the kind of media. So if it's a photo, it's blue. If it's a post, it's orange. More long is a bar, more unique post you saw. This means that the far right, the fascist, was getting a small amount of posts repeated all and over, and the majority were picture, because the blue bar represents picture, photo. The small red are videos. The yellow one, orange, instead are the post, like status, links, text. We can see that different parties were getting different kind of experience, of informative experience, and the only difference was the like they put. You are putting like to fascist page, you are getting picture and no text, and always the same. How you can judge if an algorithm is fair or not? We don't know. We will never know, because it's not okay that Mark Zuckerberg decide what is okay for you. It's not okay that I decide what is okay for you. What we hope in the future is that a more diverse judgment of the algorithm will happen. That's why we are releasing the data as open data, because this can be a kind of skill that as an investigator on this phenomena we can develop, understand what is right, what is not. Now my colleagues Renata and Federico will explain other experiences that show how investigation on the algorithm can be done.
Do you want me to follow?
Yep, if you can come here and I give you this. Vista.
Okay, so I don't come from the tech world. I come from a more dark and evil. I'm a lawyer, so it is a very different approach. But working through interdisciplinary approaches, I think that we are learning a lot together on how to approach from different perspectives what we are witnessing today. And I'm lucky enough to work with the web inventor, with Tim Berners-Lee, and he has been since the last, I would say that since the 25th anniversary of the web, he has been quite concerned on the impacts of democracy, both the impacts of disconnection, because we live in a world where most of the elections today and most of the propaganda, electoral propaganda, and most of the campaigns are taking place online. And we still have 50% of the global population offline. So we are like, when we are discussing these topics, keep that in mind. We are facing huge civic divides and tremendous media disconnects. It's something that perhaps in a European conference we don't discuss enough, but it's something that I would like all of you to keep in mind while you develop your projects and when you take different media approaches. So, well, this is one quote from the letter of Tim Berners-Lee last year. He writes this letter about the problems of the web once a year. I will tweet later the full text. And it's the reflection, what we are discussing here is how this thing that didn't exist 10 years ago, the full takeover of these platforms is risking our democracies, basically. So this is in partnership with Facebook Tracking Expose and also in partnership with local hackerspace. We developed an experiment in Argentina. And why Argentina? Because of different reasons. First, Argentina is a global south country, yet it's a G20 economy. Argentina is highly connected, and President Macri in Argentina is a part of the marketing strategy of Facebook. Is amazing. I mean, if you go, I have saved several times an Internet Archive that page saying the Facebook president. Basically, it was one of the most successful political campaigns using Facebook that got him elected, they claim. And so it was very interesting for us to look locally, to look in Argentina, how the algorithm works. And it is similar to the approach of the elections, but we tried to do it in elections and we had some hiccups, technical hiccups that always happen with this. When you are working, basically we are operating in a dark room. Like they are surgeons performing an operation, trying to figure out what's inside a brain without having the light on. That's what this experiment is, and sometimes things happen. So we couldn't monitor the election. Well, we monitored the election somehow, but then we decided to go what happens in critical moments where the public opinion is very important. That is not necessarily always elections. Elections are very attractive periods of time to evaluate how things work, and I will explain it later, not only because of the spatial rules that apply, but also all the attention of different watchdogs and resources actually to monitor different situations. But we did it during the World Trade Organization Summit. It took place in Argentina, and we knew that there will be like huge confrontation from different sectors of society, lots of protests, lots of controversy, like some media saying, oh, it's wonderful and all is peaceful, other media saying, oh, everything is falling apart. So yeah, and at the same time there was the debate of the pension law in Argentina. So basically what we did was to create 6 profiles of Argentinian women. All were identical, not identical, but similar, like all were like born in same year, so they were same age. They were created in the same IP. They were like all the conditions, all the variables were equal. I mean, not exact timestamp, but the variation of creation of the profiles was a difference of 10 minutes, more or less. And they were following the same media. So they were like not polarized. They were not doing anything online. Actually, this is the fantasy of our profiles. This was the reality of our profiles. They were like basically created, and we faced very, very interesting difficulties because you realize how. I remember when Facebook started, it was so easy to create a new account, and now, to be fair, it is not that easy to create fake accounts, and there's so many validators. It's so tight, and that's as a human rights lawyer, I'm increasingly scared about it because it is. To create these profiles, I mean, we had to go through so many different verification processes. And at the end, we could only do it with SIM cards. So we had to buy different SIM cards and activate through the mobile phone to have these profiles. So what we found is a huge gap between the stories that were published and what was shown to the profiles. Basically, if only 1 in 10 stories were shown to the profiles. Even if you were following the same media, for every 10 stories published, you will only be shown 1. And this is in critical time, in a moment of societal unrest. And so chances are that very, very important information was not shown to the users. The very interesting thing is that one of the most interesting findings is that in spite of being all women, 30-year-old women, Facebook didn't show there were some murders, feminicides in Argentina during that week, a very brutal way of murdering women, and lots of protests around that. And none of the profiles were shown any information about it, even if there was many of the media outlets were publishing information about it. So you realize how it doesn't make sense, really, how this delivery of news, this invisible hand that chooses your news operates. And there's also the different level of exposure to different articles, even if they were following exactly the same news. This is going to be published in a report next week or the week after in English and Spanish. And it includes more details on everything, but this is it's a little bit blurred because we still don't have the final version of the graphs, but you can see that from 11 stories from femicide published, none was shown. Homicide, very few. About rape, none. And this is, I think that this is the most telling graphic. If you are relying on Facebook to distribute your news, we think of Facebook as so many people mistakenly refers to Facebook as this fictional public square. And we have the false sensation that, okay, we follow 20 news. We are following the most important news of the country. We are shown the most relevant news of the most important media outlets. And in fact, what Facebook hides is far more than what it shows. So this is all the universe of information published, and you see all the amount of information that is never shown to the profiles. And thank you. And yeah, how do you?
You press the red one and you jump.
Sorry. So yeah, so you can see, and what is also very interesting is that even if they were following the same news, they were shown different news, and we cannot figure out what is the criteria that it will identical profiles in the same IP, same age, same gender were shown very different news. And imagine if you are in a house, you're with your family. How can you have an informed debate about any topic if you are like receiving completely different sorts of news? Or how can you keep a vast number of the population in complete ignorance of very relevant issues going on in your country if Facebook is the invisible hand, the curator of your news? So what we found is Facebook in many countries in the Global South is becoming the personalized newspaper of many. And 3 out of every 5 Argentinians rely on Facebook to read the news. So 3 out of 5 Argentinians are exposed to this distorted version of the public sphere. And well, as I was saying, it is hiding very relevant public interest information. And then going back to the project and reconnecting with what you're doing with Italy and hopefully with other elections, it raises high concerns about the freedom and fairness of elections. It is not, I will not discuss the US. I'm a little bit fed up of discussing the US elections because I will discuss what I know the best, and is the inter-American, Latin American legal frame for elections. And we have, and I was discussing earlier with them, very strict rules on allocation of a space. So for example, radio and television have to allocate the same amount of time to each and every political party. during campaigns. Coverage in a written press has to be like transparent, and all the allocation of advertising in newspaper has to be transparent, all the billboards. It has to be like, basically we struggle a lot to have a diverse political environment, and it was unfair that the small political parties which will never be able to afford time on television will have less. So it was usually all, even if enforcement is not great, it has been more or less accountable by electoral authorities, and electoral authorities can go and say to the television, give me a spreadsheet of all the time that you have dedicated to each political party. How can we go to Facebook and ask the same question? Without them disclosing the algorithm is basically impossible. How can electoral authorities be empowered and say, like, okay, I want to keep the elections in this country fair, and you are the personalized newspaper of so many people. Show me evidence that you are objective and that you are not favoring, because of any reason, maybe even without the willingness to do so, you're not favoring a candidate that is more clever, tricking the algorithm over other. So one way could be like that they during the electoral period, that they deactivate the way that they curate content, and they just show chronological order of the posts. But still, if the delivery of news is personalized and is so different to different users, it raises huge concerns. And tools like the Facebook tracking exposed are so necessary for electoral authorities today, because it's the only thing that we have. And I'm not pushing, I'm not saying, oh, let's regulate, but we have a problem. And we have a problem that is going to the core of fairness in elections. And we have a problem especially because we know that only those who can afford a very sophisticated data infrastructure for their political campaigns will be able to win the elections. And what will happen with the small parties? What will happen with the neighbor committees that run for municipal elections? What will happen with the small voices and with the minority groups, basically? So the problem is that so far we have the word of the platforms based outside our countries saying, oh yes, we are working hard. We are trying to do the best to improve the situation. But it took us so long, and it took such a large effort to defend our democracies that we cannot rely on this. We need, at least with Facebook tracking exposed, we are like having a snapshot, like a very, very limited evidence, but at least evidence saying this is not working in a way that is predictable, and this is many, many times unfair. So, yeah. Basically, we want to, we just have data sets of European elections in Argentina, more or less 6 weeks test in Argentina, and now we want to look into different countries, look into different platforms, and try to do a comparative analysis of the platforms, and they will tell us more how they are doing it. But yes, while you watch their explanation, keep in mind all the regulations that so far all the elections are completely ignoring.
Yeah, also we are using thank you. We are following election just because they attract the public interest, and is one of the few times in which also Europeans understand that their time has value, and someone want to buy to have your attention. But the algorithm has influence in your life during all the year, in every topics. That's why having a tool like this that permits a third-party analysis can help to just have a different alternative narrative than the one of Facebook. And now Federico will just go more deep in the analysis.
Okay, I'm going to show some graph to have a brief insight of our analysis. And okay, this is the first graph, and this is about the distribution of the media in the user timelines. And especially here we selected four of the main media, Fatto Quotidiano, Il Giornale, Il Manifesto, and Repubblica. This graph is very important to see some aspect of the analysis, especially if the algorithm respect what Facebook said. So we can't see a correlation between the user polarization and the source polarization. In fact, as we can see, especially we can see that, for example, for Repubblica, we have more or less equally distributed, an equally distribution. But, for example, Il Giornale is often just on the right profile and on the 5-star movement. And if we change the graph, we can see the same graph, but in another period of the Italian election. And here we can see how it changed during time. Repubblica is the only one maintaining a very strong impact on the user timelines, and all the other sources are were losing all of their impact, all of their presence on user timelines. What does it say? It says that what the algorithm does is not something that can be predictable or that can be judged before, but it can be observed as something that is not a rules, or like, for example, here for Il Giornale, Andrea, that is the right profile, is losing all of the Il Giornale's feeds. Here we have is more or less the same graph as before, but we have the number of records, and especially we don't have media sources, but we have political sources such as candidates and community or parties pages. Okay, here we can see that in the first part of the experiment, between the 8th and the 14th of February, the impact of Salvini, that are both the first two sources, is huge. Instead, all of the other sources has just a small impact on all the sources, not just some. If we change the period, we can see how it changed. In fact, Salvini was losing more or less all of the posts on some users, and Repubblica, Democratic Party, is taking a lot of space in all of the user timelines. This is also important because of this. In fact, as Zuckerberg said in January, he was prioritizing all of the contents made by friends rather than the contents made by the sources. The effect of this can be seen, especially for Lega Salvini Premier and Noi con Salvini in that part of the graph. In fact, this is the effect. This is what can happen when the algorithm change. So we have a huge number of records before, and then after just one day, the number of records is almost half. Okay, this is a quite complicated graph. This graph wants to represent the repetition of feeds in every user timelines. This want to show also how close a Facebook environment can be. In fact, we have on the top all the profiles, but on the left we have the number of repetition. In the first row, we have just the post seen just once. In the second line, all the posts seen twice, and so on until 20. What is interesting here is the fact that, as Claudio said before, the far right movement, the far right profile, Michele, is not only the one seeing more pictures than post, but he is also the one with more repeated post. In fact, as we can see in this line, we have also post repeated 20 times. This is the same graph, but in the second part of the experiment, and is also divided by the polarization of the source. So we have different color for different political source. It remains more or less constant as the one we saw before. It does not change so much. But if we go to the third one, this is divided in colors to show pictures, videos, and post. But if we consider this related to the other two, we can see how in the third moment of the Italian election it seems more regular, especially if we look at the far right profile. We can see how it is more or less the same as the left and the center left. And the five-star movement, that was the one with less repeated post, is now one with more repeated post. Especially, we can see some posts repeated 26 or 27 times. Here is the last graph, and is about a specific analysis that is done just with the contents seen as top 15 in the timeline. So we consider just what a profile see on the top of the timeline, and it can show how the experience can be different, but especially how some sources have more or less the same impact. As we can see right now, La Repubblica, its impact is very regular in all the profile, such as all of the main sources in different way. And yeah, this was the last one. Yeah. Yes.
Tomorrow, thank you. Tomorrow there is another talk that want to address the issue of algorithm-driven censorship, because if some content appear or doesn't, and you just get flooded and distracted by other content. Is it censorship? I don't know. In theory, the content does not be taken down, but then has not surfaced to your eyes, and this can be controlled to don't surface to the majority of the users. How much this is censorship and when it's not, we're going to debate also about this in the panel of tomorrow. Thank you. Okay. That is the link of the project. We are releasing the dataset because you can do analysis. Those are a JSON file. We normally use Tableau or other kind of analysis mechanism. Currently, we have no fund, but we are looking to, I don't know, being used, find collaboration with the newsroom or other organization that want to do analysis on the algorithm. We're looking for volunteers in the sense that who want to explore the difficulty about doing reporting on algorithm, or want to do data collection and create a new experiment like the one we made during the election, but in other context. We are a group that is growing. We are looking to get the most diverse kind of collaboration because the problem is by nature different in every context. A compliment to Federico was his first presentation, so. Now we have time for questions.
Before the time for questions, just a comment on this call for volunteers. It would be really, really good to get this project, the mobile application, funded, because we have looked into what happens from browsers, but we know that half of the global population, like if not more of the internet users affected by this receiving the information on a mobile phone. How is working for them? It would be very interesting to see, for example, if the Facebook algorithm is differentiating like users on an iPhone and giving them different content from users on a cheap telephone, and whether the location matters, so many things, and especially check what's happening with the free basics users. And so please, 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 if anyone is interested in supporting these guys on developing the next testing application, it would be great. So questions?
Please, but you need the microphone.
Hi. In your opinion, is there any open web technology an escape from this bubble, maybe getting back to RSS feeds or some other ways of, or maybe some kind of decentralized web, like a few instances. People are working on this, but they are out of companies, so they are slow, they are uncoordinated. So I don't know. I'm a heavy RSS user since even.
Well, a bubble is something that is not just a technical problem. I create my own bubble, and I'm proud of my bubble. I had 37 years to create the perfect bubble, because now I know what I can trust and what I cannot. So we cannot just imagine that a bubble are a problem. It's a problem when this became blindness. And this is a political problem or a cultural problem. It's not just a technical solution. I heard about some hypotheses like, what if the algorithm once a while randomize your newsfeed and you see something new? Well, I will be annoyed, quite likely. So we're looking forward to make a tool that will make you a personal assessment and a way to do confrontation between you and your peer. You have a friend, you believe that you are discussing about the same topic, but try to put in check your timeline with the friend's timeline. Maybe you understand that only the 30% is really in common. We are looking for some kind of more human solution to something that otherwise is always declaimed as a technical problem.
And I will say that the first step is literacy on people. And many people, what we found in the Argentinian case, we got together with civil society and with groups studying media and with journalists. And many of them, like you will say, highly educated and really public interest-oriented people, they have no clue on how this technology works. Basically, not even journalists know how this works, or media experts. So when we started explaining that actually, okay, you miss most of the news and you don't get the information, I mean, even you're following the main sources, you don't get the information, they were shocked. So part of this work on literacy at the Web Foundation, we are trying to dissect the technologies, like opening the boxes, and show what's inside. A little bit like, how in the past we hear stories from the grandpas when they received the first televisions, that no one had any idea why the hell there were little persons inside moving and talking to us, and it was a shocking. I think that we are going through similar shock, where we do not know what's inside these boxes, and we are very afraid of what's inside, very excited, very afraid, or just simply being very passive about them. And it is our task to open it and try to dissect what's inside and fight the laws that impede us from doing that, and claiming it as a right, because we have a right to know what's going on inside that, because it impacts our lives, and making people more curious and more critical about these technologies. I mean, we did it with food. We did it with food now. Before, we will just eat anything that they will put in front of us, but food was simpler. as food got more complex, we consumer associations and public interest groups achieved having the labels, at least some okay level of detail of what's inside what we eat. Well, this is our information diet, is what we eat here. And I think that is equally important. So I think that that's the next fight before, similarly, doing the analogy with food. When we knew what we were eating and what was doing to our health, we became more conscious and we became more careful on what we eat. Or if not, just, okay, we eat junk food, but we know that we are eating junk food. Similar with junk news. I mean, there's a little pleasure getting like a rubbish content sometimes, but I think that if we understand how it is not us choosing what we eat mentally, what we consume as information, but it is Facebook feeding us with it. I think that that's the key point, and that's becoming aware about that is how we break the circle. So step by step.
A question on the back.
Yeah.
There is a question on the last row.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hello. You showed us the graphic about how many posts Facebook doesn't show, I think.
It only shows 1 in 10 in the Argentinian experiment.
Yes, and my question is, if Facebook would show all the posts, it would be quite an information overflow, I think. Or how do you think Facebook should filter this best?
I think that, one of the recommendations that we are doing in the upcoming report that I hope that all of you will read with attention is giving more control on the user, because it's not, of course, you don't read the entire newspaper. I think that only my grandfather does that. But you choose what you read, and you choose if you want to stay longer time in the sports section or in the political section, if you want to entirely skip the society section and so on. So perhaps empowering the user and giving them more controls on what they want to see, and transparency, giving, like, for example, having a personalized monthly transparency report to the user and saying, like, you know, this is what we show you, this is what we didn't show, like the percents at least of what you got, and this is how you can adjust what you get. I think that would be like the first step, at least being able, of course, not everyone will care about that, but I think that it will be like an important tool, not only for the user and the reader, but also for media organizations. Because I'm not sure if they get, I don't know what happened on their side, and that was not our focus was users. But it is basically, it's very counterintuitive, because many like little media, like insignificant media that were producing very little information and not so interesting information were rewarded by the algorithm. And that was one of the surprises of the report. Like Rio Negro, small newspaper in the middle of nowhere, will always be shown to the users, and many of the mainstream high-quality journalism wasn't shown at all. Yeah.
Just to integrate, seems that some source has took the habit to believe that as much as can publish, has to publish, in order to probably be present in your timeline, take your eyeballs, and make you click on their page. That is a way to exploit the economy attention. It's a way that I call spam. When you are creating a media that updates 900 times per day, or some politician that publish 300 status per day. Really, you have 300 things to say every 24 hours? So, also, Facebook Tracking Exposed has not begun to blame Facebook, but to find the right responsibility between reader, platform, and publisher. We cannot just expect that Facebook will solve all the problem. Therefore, Facebook has not to be responsible for all the problem. We as user have a perfectly ability to decide what matters for us. And maybe journalists are keeping publishing. They will know that they can be penalized if they prefer quantity over quality.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Renata, for the great metaphors. I really enjoy them. I actually am part of the supporting Claudio in different projects related to tracking, but not on Facebook. And here at the festival, I had the chance to attend a workshop by Facebook in the first day, and they were trying to explain how, like, we see our news feed, and like there is this grading system, ranking system, and how it's personalized up to our behavior. And I was really surprised when I saw your experience with the 6 profiles, which totally have the same behavior and like in the same media, but did see different content. So I'm wondering if there is this great part of your work that will need a bit of lobbying to influence as well the work of Facebook, as you're physically in the same space as you had this conversation, and have them answer why the hell we have different results for these 6 profiles.
Yes, actually we share with them for comment. Like part of our objective of doing this report is actually providing them with good information on what the side of the users, like the perspective of the users, and the little evidence that we can gather, because we don't have access to what they have access to. And the problem was that this is a very turbulent time to engage with Facebook, because they're kind of frozen. We expected a more engaged relationship with the Argentinian office and with the team in charge of these kind of decisions. But it was in the middle of the storm. So I hope that once the storm passes, that we have better chances, not only to engage with Facebook, but with other platforms. And an important factor is David Kay, the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression of the United Nations. His next report is going to be on platforms. So we can contribute from a human rights perspective as well, and from different perspectives we can contribute to the report. And so, yeah, of course, we are open to, and part of the methodology was to share the report with them for comment before publishing, so, yeah. They promise information that they never send to us, so.
Another question? Thank you.
Hi. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very interesting. I just want to ask, so it seems like in your opinion or in your research, the traditional media as in print, TV, do you think, as in traditional media, do you think that we get all information we need to get compared to the information that is filtered on Facebook, if you see what I mean?
No, my point is like concretely, I will use the concrete example of elections. It is not about, of course, we will never read all the newspapers even if you are subscribed at your home of 10 newspapers, you will just, unless you are like paid to do that, you will not read it, and you will not get all the information from radio and television and so on. The matter is a matter of transparency, because in the case of, in the spatial periods, for example, for instance, in elections, we cannot be sure that we cannot measure how they are treating equal parties, for example. If they commit to more transparency on how the allocation, and that we can audit that they are not giving priority to any of the actors, of any preference of any of the political content, not the media content, I think that is first step. On the case of curation, the problem is the lack of control on the side of the reader, because one thing is that when you deliberately skip channels, skip past news that are not interesting to you, and very different is the situation when it's the platform deciding by you. Instead of you have this invisible hand choosing what, I will give you 3 strawberries and 2 potatoes, and to this one I will give 2 bananas and 2 strawberries. And no coffee for any of the 2. Like, it's kind of like that. It's so random that it's hard to understand, and it's hard to predict the social impact on that.
But what I mean is that even in traditional media, you have different newspapers that align with different parties, And in this new paper, we do not get, for example, you don't get support from a newspaper that is aligned with your...
No, I get your point. I get your point. But in traditional media, we usually, more or less, newspapers are transparent on their agenda, kind of. You know which one is the right wing, which one is the left wing, kind of. And you choose. You choose which one to read, which one not to read. The problem with Facebook delivering the news, if your way to receive the news is Facebook, is that they are choosing for you, and that we do not have any idea if the machine places you in a specific box and delivers certain news just because you liked, I don't know, you liked Noam Chomsky on your profile. They will deliver just certain type of news, or just because you liked, I don't know, Beyonce, they will think that, okay, Beyonce supports Hillary Clinton, then, you know, like we have no idea. And I think that we have the right, as users, the right to know in which boxes they are putting us. This is the minimum.
Thank you. I think I prefer Noam Chomsky, but thank you very much for the answer. Yeah.
Okay, we are done. 5 minutes.
Still 5 minutes. In the meanwhile, I also tell you that if you want to try the extension, in this moment, your data are just accessible to your own, and we are working on a feature that can permit you to share your own personal experience with a friend you decide. Google, take us down. So there is a post that explains how we get a trademark infringement notice, and the extension that was permitting to study the algorithm of Facebook is not accessible anymore in the Google Play Store. Only the Firefox version is currently working. We're going to fix it, but it also shows how policy and public understanding of the needs of this tool can eventually raise some pressure. In the tweet I showed at the beginning, there are updates, and the article that explains about this issue is linked. There is another question? Well, thank you.
We finish in time.